Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum. Here is Missy Krasker and all my students hopefully are fine at their home. Welcome to my maths class students. Let's start with the book title, that is New Secondary Mathematics Students Course Book Volume 2. ओके तो स्टूडेंट्स ये बुक चूँकि अभी तक अवेलेबल नहीं है हमें, तो इसलिए हम ई रिसोर्सेज से अपना सिलेबस स्टार्ट करते हैं। तो चैप्टर नंबर 1 में हमारा टाइटल होगा डायरेक्ट एंड इनडायरेक्ट प्रोपोर्शंस। स्टूडेंट्स, ये डायरेक्ट एंड इनडायरेक्ट प्रोपोर्शंस को स्टार्ट करने से पहले ये बहुत ज़रूरी है कि मैं आपको एक ब्रीफ रिव्यू दूँ about proportions. And here is also very good news for all the students who are familiar about the equivalent fractions. Let's start with the fraction. Here 1 over 2 is a fraction, or 1 over 2, 1 by 2, or 1 half. Now a pair of equivalent fractions, see here 1 over 2 and another fraction 5 over 10. In this fraction 1 is a half of 2, and in this fraction 5 is a half of 10. Means these two fractions are representing the same amount, half of another number. So we can say these are equivalent fractions. Next, see. Now ratio. Before introducing the proportion, ratio is very need instead. Ratio is basically just a fraction that is used in a certain way. For example, let's take a example in our class, in our class, if one boy is one genius boy reads a book in 2 days, and then the ratio of book to days will be 1 by 2. Okay, this is ratio. And take another boy's example that reads 10 books, that reads 5 books in 10 days. What will be the rate? Then we can see that for each 2 days he will read one book. Means here is also the rate is 1 by 2. So these two ratios, 1 by 2, 1 book per day, and this is another ratio, 5 books per day. These are two ratios, and these are also equivalent ratios, so they represent the same amount. Okay, let's see. If we put an equal sign between equivalent ratios, then we can say they are in proportion. That 1 by 2 and this ratio 5 by 10, these two fractions, these two ratios are in proportion with rate half. Okay, now proportion is just two ratios that are equivalent or equal. But in proportions we should keep in mind that both equivalent ratios should represent some similarities. We should remember that both ratios have same value and same units. Both ratios represent same thing in numerator and denominator. But how? Let's take two examples. One example for A point and second example for B point. Let's take example. If we have a 1 by 2, 1 book per days, and if we change the books by pizzas in the second ratio, then these two fractions are no more in proportions, because these and this ratio do not representing the same thing, so these are no more in proportions. Let's take another example. If we switch the second fraction, the number of days by number of books, then we can see that this ratio and this ratio is not same in values. Means here 1 by 2 and here 2, not same in value. So these two fractions in this manner are also no longer in proportions. So we should keep in mind that in proportions, both equivalent ratios must have the same value and same units, and also they represent the same thing in numerator and denominator. Like this, one yellow button and two buttons represent the number 3, and here two yellow buttons over 4, so 1 by 3 and 2 by 6. These two fractions are also equivalent fractions, so also same, so they are in proportion. What now? What are proportions good for? Means why we use the proportions? This is your task. You should think about it. Why we use the proportions? One, I give you the 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let me explain. That students, proportions are used to find out something that we do not know by using the data that we do know. Okay, so proportions are used to find something that we do not know by using the values that we do know. Now, there are two types of proportions: direct proportions and indirect proportions. But firstly, direct proportions increase in one amount because we have two ratios in a proportion, so increase in one amount will increase in another amount, or decrease in one amount decrease in another amount, means both ratios will increase or decrease proportionally.